Let's do a biomolecule breakdown, kind of the four main types and what they do, why they're important to the body. Because why not do more biochemistry after I just finished a full 2 semesters of it? First up, carbs. People tend to get very up in arms about carbohydrates and sugar in general, but sugar and carbohydrates in and of themselves are not bad for you. In excess, everything is bad for you, but just carbs in general are not bad for you. This is glucose, the most abundant one and the most commonly well-known one. So what a carbohydrate is, it's basically a carbon backbone. So each part of the hexagon, each corner of the hexagon is a carbon molecule, or atom, carbon atom. And attached to that is a bunch of OH, so hydroxyl groups, and there's a oxygen in there. Then there's that little extra CH2OH up there, which is characteristic of glucose. Glucose is a very important fuel source. Plants make it on their own via photosynthesis. Humans and animals can't do that, unfortunately, so we have to get it from our secondary sources, and it acts as the, kind of starting point for most metabolism. It starts through the process of glycolysis. Other sugars includes fructose, which is kind of similar to glucose, except it is a pentose instead of a hexose, so it has a 5-membered ring instead of a 6-membered ring. Then, to make more complex sugars, such as sucrose, which is the bottom molecule, simple sugars such as glucose and fructose are joined together by glycosidic bonds. And sucrose is, if you know, it's what is commonly known as table sugar, white sugar, all of that. It can also be in these even more complex forms such as amylose and amylopectin, which are the 2 polysaccharides. So a saccharide is a sugar, polysaccharide is multiple sugars, and so these polysaccharides are what make up starch, which is the storage molecule for glucose in plants, whereas glycogen is the storage molecule for sugars in humans and other animals. So we don't store sugar as starch, we store it as glycogen, but plants use it as in starch in the forms of amylose and amylopectin. Next up are lipids, aka fats, which is another one people get unreasonably angry at because fat equals bad in lots of people's minds, but again, fats in and of themselves are not bad for you. So this is a phospholipid. It is made up of a phosphate group, a glycerol, and some fatty acid tails. These are what makes up our cell membranes. There's a phospholipid bilayer, which is one phospholipid here, and it makes up the cell membrane. So phospholipids are very important because they keep our cells in their cell shapes and stops them from going all over. And lipids are a very diverse group of macromolecules or biological molecules. They're just kind of they don't like water, so it's probably a lipid. That is kind of the only concrete characteristic of lipids is they're hydrophobic and they do not like water. Another type of lipids are the fatty acids, which again, people tend to get very angry about fatty acids, but they are very important. They do a lot of functions. They do cell signaling and store energy, and they're used as an energy source. Lots of things. Again, in excess is bad, but just fatty acids themselves are not bad for you. They can be saturated, so they have no double bonds. You can see the second one here is a saturated fatty acid. That means there's no double bonds and all the possible places are filled up with hydrogen, so it is saturated with hydrogen. And then unsaturated fatty acids have a double bond, and therefore those spaces are taken up by the double bond and do not have the hydrogen there, so they are unsaturated. So, lots of people have heard of omega-3 fatty acid, one of the most common ones, and so that one is, I think, pictured at the bottom. Yeah, so fatty acids have very many, very important functions in the body. Now, hormones and steroids are also lipids, they're also fats, and steroids are classified by this structure of 4 rings fused together. You can see up there. This is cholesterol, a very important and very well-known steroid. So yeah, it's classified by the 4 fused rings, and then it has that side chain, but that's just an extra bonus thing. Again, cholesterol, it functions by stabilizing cell membranes, so it makes it more or less fluid depending on the conditions necessary. Again, too much cholesterol can be bad for you. It can cause buildup in the arteries, which is not good, but if you keep good cholesterol levels, then it's not a problem. Again, hormones such as estrogen, testosterone, those are also lipids, and people, again, they think hormones are bad, but hormones are literally just signaling molecules. That is what they do. And other types of lipids also include waxes and detergents and all that, which is very interesting because they're just basically like, well, it's a biomolecule and it doesn't like water, so therefore it is a lipid. Proteins, they are made up of amino acids, and all an amino acid is, so there's a central carbon, it has a hydrogen on it, a amino group, which is NH3, and it has a carboxyl group on the other side, which is COOH, and then it has a side chain, which is what makes it different. So different amino acids are characterized by their different side chains. One may just have a hydrogen, which makes it a glycine amino acid, or it could have a bunch of fancier ones, so it could be methionine or tryptophan or all of those, and they're so annoying to memorize. So this is just kind of amino acids on their own, but they can join together to form polypeptides by the formation of peptide bonds, and those polypeptides join together and make proteins. And proteins are very important. They do a ton of different functions, and they have very, very specific structures, and these structures of the proteins are very important for their function, and if the structure gets messed up, then the protein stops working. Enzymes are also types of protein. They act as biological catalysts to make biological reactions go faster. And there's a ton of different types of enzymes that do all different functions and are also very important to the body. Proteins are encoded by genes, which are in DNA, and I'll go into DNA in a second, but basically the DNA tells the body what proteins to make, which are encoded in these specific genes. So they are very important. Gene expression leads to proteins. And finally, we have DNA. Everyone's heard of DNA, at least. So what it is a double helix structure made out of a sugar-phosphate backbone, which basically that means there's a carbohydrate with a phosphate group attached to it, and there are at least DNA, there are 4 different base pairs. So there's the purines, the adenosine and guanine, and the pyrimidines, the thymine and cytosine. And these bond together in a specific order. Adenosine always binds to thymine, and guanine always binds to cytosine. However, in RNA, thymine is replaced with uracil. So based on the order of these base pairs in the DNA strand, it codes for different genes, which codes for different proteins, which have different functions. So that is kind of just a fast breakdown of the different types of biomolecules that are in your body.